Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Money in the Law on my FM 101.3, also being filmed on the Holliston Cable Access TV. I'm John Drohan, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by the other, probably more prestigious host, famous, infamous, however you want to say, the great Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group. Jay, how are you today?
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you how I am. I'm tremendous because you know what time of the year it is? What's it today? What's today? Well, what's
Saturday?
What was Wednesday? What was Wednesday? What was Wednesday?
Wednesday was the first day of something, maybe not winter.
Spring, baby.
There we go.
Spring. It's not. I mean, this is kind of how, right? You're in New England, so you want to be excited. Can't get too excited because Mother Nature. She's fickle. She's fickle. She doesn't release that grip on old man winter too lightly. So you got to watch a little bit, but. The theory at this time of the year is, even if they drop a foot of snow on us tomorrow, it's gone 3 days later. It's going to be, right.
It's going to melt.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yes. So we are on the upswing. We have officially arrived at the upswing. Most notably to the watching public, that can be evidenced by the fact that I no longer are carrying around that. My wife would describe it as that horrible beard that I was dragging
that
around
mongoose
all
you had
winter long.
Crazy glued to your face? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The beard is gone. That's an annual tradition. We start the beard before the winter gets really rolling, and then the beard, according to the rules at 32 Winnie Lane, the beard needs to be removed by the time my wife wakes up the day after St. Patrick's Day.
And
it has to be gone.
And as per rule,
that's right.
That did happen, and here you are. You look great.
Here we are.
Look 15 years younger.
Easily, which would make me about 25. Yeah,
which would make you, no. No, your math is a little off, but you're in the right church. Right church, wrong people.
You're in the ballpark. That's right. That's right.
So how we know that springtime is coming, and it was fortunate that this happened on Wednesday, which is crazy. So we every year, and we haven't the last couple of years we haven't had great snow, but we were fortunate. Like towards the end of the winter season, we had some great snowman making snow. So we set the new record, the new yard record, 9 feet 3 inches, a 9-foot snowman, and so his name was a great name, Jerry with a G, right?
Of course.
So Jerry was the last thing standing in the yard as the weather started. And when I went out on Wednesday morning, there was a snowball like the size of a regular size snowball, and that was Jerry. Oh. And so thank God that he was still there.
Yeah.
I scooped him up, put him in a little container. He's in my freezer.
Of course.
So I'm going to keep him till next year.
Making margaritas with him later?
No. We're going to make him into a new snowman next year. Like he'll be part of the,
I think you drop him in a nice single malt glass there with a little, just a little over the top,
Well, if I did that, remember he's been sitting on my lawn where my dog is.
That's a good point. Yep. All those chemicals.
Yeah.
All that Roundup. Yeah. Right. Watch out for that.
Yeah. I'm loading up my Roundup there. Yeah.
Yep.
So
all right. Oh, maybe I'll
so springtime.
Neat at your house then. That's note to self.
Springtime is here.
Yes.
Everybody's excited. Everybody's starting to feel it. St. Patrick's Day. Did you have a good St. Patrick's Day?
Great St. Patty's Day. Yep. Spent some time trying to help out the local economy. So we went to some local establishments. We like to take in
as you do
the local festivity. We like to support the businesses and listen to some great live Irish music, and had a good time connecting with people. And we always joke about this, right? So St. Patty's Day on a weekend, it's just special. It's just something special about it.
It feels particularly good.
That's right. That's right. Because it doesn't happen every year. It's not like it's the same day every year. It's a rotating, moving target.
No.
So, obviously working for yourself, every day could be a weekend if you chose it to be that way. But
every day could be St. Patrick's Day.
We don't need to find more ways to be less productive if we've talked about that before. So it was great time. And like I said, bumped into some good friends and had a grand old time. How about yourself?
Ours was good. We fortunately or unfortunately, we had some soccer that day. Yep. So we missed a party, and I want to give a shout out. We missed a party that we were supposed to go to the our dear friend Eric Kaharich.
Oh, great Eric Kaharich. Yep.
Eric Kaharich, who decided he wanted to get St. Patrick's Day started. It said 12:30, but I was getting texts from him around 7:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
So for those of you who know the Eric Kaharich, he's not afraid to get rolling early. So unfortunately we missed his party because of a conflict with soccer tournaments. But I think we're still on the list. I think we might still be on the list for next year.
Excellent. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Great to hear. Great to hear. So what are we talking about today?
Well, glad you asked. We are talking about today, we had alluded to this last week, but we didn't really get to it. We're talking about estate planning. And in particular, unfortunately, we have to talk about the estate planning, how, we always talk about estate planning, how it applies to the regular people. But every now and again, when somebody who many people know or famous people pass away, we can kind of address, they have probably an estate of some considerable measure, maybe more measure than most of us. And when somebody famous passes away, the first thing is what was their, did they have an estate plan, and what did it look like? We've seen some train wreck estate plans for some since we've been doing the show. The late great Prince, who that's probably the worst one to record to note, because Prince didn't have any direct siblings, didn't have any. Well, he had siblings, but he didn't have any children. He wasn't married.
It's half siblings, kind of
right.
a little bit of a convoluted org chart, as we say.
Yeah, and he had, along with a very sizable estate, he had that kind of that intangible or kind of interpretable, all of his music that was never published. So that kind of being able to put some kind of price or some kind of value on that. I'm sure they're still struggling with it today. So
I think the discussion at one point was he had left enough unpublished music behind that he could put out music for the next, and I'm not even making this up, for the next 100 years.
Right. So you think, okay, so what is that worth? I mean, to a guy like me, it's worth, I don't know, some good music, but to an accomplished musician who can say, oh, wow, that's a great, I wish I thought of that.
Well, to the estate, the estate could literally continue to publish music under his name going forward for generations, generations of music, right?
Sure.
And
just pumping out Prince music.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the one extreme that that we use as an example of where there was absolutely no estate plan and just a total mess kind of on the from an administrative and from a legal standpoint. And now, unfortunately, the great Luke Perry passed away suddenly a couple weeks back now. At the young age of 52, which, of course, everybody in this room, with the exception of Christian, that's really young.
Oh, that's right in the wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah. So, but fortunately for his family, he did some estate planning. So we're going to talk about kind of what he did today, and how he set his family up for success, and maybe set a good example for us too.
And it's the other side of it, right? Because like I said, the idea that somebody like Prince or somebody like Aretha Franklin passes away, no estate plan, that gets some of the news, because there's more news. Somebody filed to be named as the executor, and there might be an interfamily squabble about who gets that job. So we're going to talk about a situation where somebody did it right, and sort of what it means to have done it right, and it's somebody that everybody's familiar with. And then to your point, somebody who, from an age perspective, was not 102, right? I mean, somebody young guy, certainly not anticipating his own demise, but had done the work ahead of time to make things much easier for his family, while he was ill and then after he passed away. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about that.
A break already?
Well,
actually, before we go on our break, I just want to say that it's not that. I mean, you could say it from a couple different perspectives. So if I were an estate planning attorney that was getting assigned to, say, the Prince or Aretha Franklin case, and they said, "Oh, listen, there's a lot of billable hours. We have to figure this all out." So then that's not necessarily bad. If I were to say,
it's not how we see. That's not how we view it. That's not how we see it.
I
mean, to the outside world, to the untrained eye,
because you wouldn't take it, right?
Well, we would sit down. We would have our initial free consultation, and then we would figure out from there what this might look like, and we'd write that puppy up.
We would show a beautiful example of what not free looks like.
Well, we would go in the other room. We would close the door. We would dance around a little bit. Then we come back out. We'd talk about this. This is going to be a lot. Yep, this could be work. This could be work. Yep.
All right, so we'll talk about the other side of that spectrum when we get back on my FM 101.3, Money in the Law with Jay Marsden and John Drohan on Hollison Cable Access. Hollison Cable Access TV with Christian Boudet. All right, we'll be right back.
And you're back. Money in the Law, my FM 101.3, Jay Marsden, Marsden Law Group, John Drohan, Main Effort Financial, Christian manning the con. And we're talking about, unfortunately, the sudden and unexpected passing of Luke Perry. But there's a lesson in there. His unfortunate passing left a lesson, and the lesson was we've talked about celebrities who have some high-profile situations where planning wasn't done, and this is by all accounts from the outside looking in. This is a situation where things had been done much differently, and a lot of this, my understanding, and I was unaware of this. My understanding was that a lot of his willingness to plan was sort of predicated on the idea that at some point he had a cancer scare, which I was unaware of.
I was too.
And
I was unaware as well, yeah.
So 2015, he had a cancer scare, so I think he obviously took some steps. Now, those steps, we talk about this, again, we try to lay this over the situation that everybody's the same. Put aside, your people's flair for the dramatic and their sort of role in society, whether they're public or not public. But the situation is very similar, right? Your health doesn't really care who you are, right? So we talk about probate while you're alive all the time, right? That's part of the 3 steps of 3 legs of a planning stool. Probate while you're alive. And the discussion for those who follow the story was he had a serious medical event, and that serious medical event sent him to the hospital. 52 years old, as you mentioned before, he had a serious stroke, and to the point that when he got to the hospital, he was heavily sedated. This whole idea of, we're going to sort of induce you into a coma because there's so much, coming at your body that they just don't know how else your body might be able to deal with this other than to literally put you in some type of, stasis where you can sort of think about, let's just let your body recover without having to be sort of bombarded by, by outside influence, if you will. And 5 days later, his family made the decision to remove the life support after it was determined that he wouldn't recover following what they believe was a second stroke, okay? And at the time, surrounded by his children, he had 2 kids, 21-year-old Jack and 18-year-old Sophie, and he had a fiance, he had a former ex-wife, his mother, and his siblings, among others. That's how it's reported. So let's think this through, right? Forgetting for 1 second. I mean, it's Luke Perry, and he had made a decision that said, look, if this situation comes to pass, which none of us can predict, right?
Right, because it's unlikely, right? It's unlikely at age 52, right? And he didn't go in. I mean, it's not like he had heart or coronary or any type of stroke-related things. I don't think so. I don't think in his medical history said that, right? So he had a cancer scare, and it's like, whoa, anybody can get cancer at any time. That's like one of those. It's like one of the things, one of the awful things about cancer. So he's like, oh yeah, I have this scare, and I'm gonna get this stuff squared away.
By the way, we've talked about this. This is what prompts many people to say, you know what, I got to get my stuff. I got to get things lined up, right? I got to get things lined up, right? So he did that. He went and got things lined up. And the reason that people think that obviously he had done his homework was he must have, to some degree, signed some advance directives that say, if I can't make decisions, if I'm incapacitated, if I have little chance or little probability of recovering, this documentation authorizes who is allowed to make decisions to basically let me go gentle into that good night, and let's turn off the life support, and let's not put me on every single machine under the sun. Let me be surrounded by my loved ones rather than have all my loved ones, out in probate court and this public display of family disagreement and things like that.
Celebrity family disagreement.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So all of that was avoided. He had a medical event. He went to the hospital. The family gathered round. The doctors came in and said, this is the prognosis that you're dealing with, and I'm sure there was some really hard conversations that were going on. And at some point, the family said, okay, who's been given the authority to make these decisions? And the reason that, the speculation is that this had all been done, because if it hadn't been done, this would have played out publicly in a probate court, right? Somebody would have get up and said, I represent the family. Somebody else might have get up and said, I represent dissenting members of the family, and now we're going to fight this out. And that still could have happened, even if you have these documents in place. Somebody still could make that noise, but at least a probate court has some guidance from the person who has signed and created these advance directives. But one thing that we talk about with people all the time is, if you have these advance directives created, what's going to happen is, if somebody starts to rattle their saber and say, well, guess what? You know what? I think I'm going to object, if you will, to your position that you're taking. Once you pull these papers out and you go, look, You can object all you want.
Yeah,
and
this is what it says. This is his signature, right? And we just confirm that this is. It says,
and it is notarized, right? So he did it of his own free will, right?
Yeah.
So then you can say to somebody, look, if you want to go to probate court and fight this out, that's fine.
Day.
But you're not going to be successful, and it's just going to play out in the public space. Why don't we avoid that?
The only guy who wins is your probate attorney, who you're hired, and your probate attorney's like, oh yeah, I'll fight this, till the end of the earth. But you're going to lose.
Right, or until the end of the money, right, one of the two.
Right, and you're going to pay me.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, and if somebody comes in and says that, what you just said is exactly what I would advise. I would say to somebody, look, does the person that you're sort of
because you're going to look at the paper. You're going to say that's his signature, right? That's a notary. Yeah, that's a yeah.
And by the way, and he was 52 years old, so he was completely of his own sound mind. Wasn't 92. Wasn't
I just
suffering
saw him
from
on
dementia.
TV last season.
Just saw him on Riverdale. Knew what he was doing, right? So the probability that you're going to be able to find a problem with what's been done is slim to none. And this is really, unfortunately, it's a waste of time in the sense that somebody's wishes have been made very clear. You don't have much of a leg to stand on.
And so, but look at it. So, like you said, take the Luke Perry piece out of it. So take the fame and the
apply it to your own situation,
or apply it to many situations. So he's divorced with adult children. Divorced with adult children, which
and by the way, young adult children.
Oh yeah,
that's right, young kids, right?
Yeah. So in their 20s, right, 21, 20, right. So your early 20s, divorced. And he's got a fiance, so he's in another relationship that he's obviously very serious. He loves us. So I mean, how often can you see this? This seems extremely common, right? I mean, common in the sense that when you're the divorce is a very it's a very common thing. So a lot of estate plans are going to deal with this and deal with like these adults, especially when people are like get older. They're going to have the kids are going to be older. So
second relationships.
So
you
could very easily I have clients that are in the same position, right? They have a new person in their life, or they've remarried, but they're from their ex-wife, and they have their children from their ex-wife or from a previous relationship, and here you go, and it's ripe for, if there's no estate plan and there's money involved, and we always say when it comes to money, people are going to act weird. So if there's money involved, particularly with, say, the new person in the relationship or the new wife, and there's old children, and the ex-wife doesn't feel like that, she's probably or he or she, ex-spouse hadn't gotten a good deal in the first place, and something like this happens, it's ripe for dissension. It's ripe for let's fight about it, because I feel like I have more rights to this money than someone else does, or I feel like my children do.
And we can spin out the reasons why all of a sudden somebody's getting involved and somebody's in control, or somebody wants to be in control all day long.
Yeah.
Some of them good, some of them bad, right? Some of them I want to do over, and this is my chance to fix things, and it's in my own head, and it's not in anybody else's head. But this is where stuff plays out all the time. And again, to your point, I tell people, it comes up a lot in our meetings, and I tell people, as long as I have a piece of paper to fight over, that makes it a lot easier, and in some cases it becomes a lot easier to go to another party and say, look, it's very clear what's supposed to happen here. I know you disagree with it, or I know that you think you should play a different role, but unfortunately, that ship has sailed. There's nothing we can do, but this is what we have. And this is what's going to carry the day. So if you want to drag this whole thing into the light, well, that's fine. You're going to be unsuccessful, because I can't see how this doesn't hold up.
Yeah, it's when you have the probate while you're alive documentation, when you have your will, when you have your powers of attorney, when you have your healthcare proxy, when you have your trust, your pour over trust, or whatever you've done. What it does is it clears it up, and it makes it, and so when someone wants to fight it, like, you're limited as to what you can do. Like I've limited. So if I'm divorced and my ex is trying to get money from 20 years ago, it's going to be much harder for them to do that, because it's all documented. Sound mind and body.
And it makes it crystal clear to the healthcare providers not only what's supposed to happen here, but who is the person who's driving this bus, right? And you mentioned it a minute ago, right? So you get a second family, right? So you have Luke Perry, you have his kids, you have his fiance, you have his ex-wife, and then you have his his immediate family,
Sure.
right? His parents, my assumption is if they're alive, obviously they're part and parcel of that process, and any siblings he might have. So everybody in the room, they all love you, right? They all care about you, right? But they also come at it from their own perspective, and
They may not love everybody in the room.
well, they may not love everybody in the room, and then families are families. There may be some unresolved issues, right? You know, you have a phone call with somebody, you hang up the phone, things get a little hot about some conversation, and you figure you'll square it up later, and the opportunity to square it up doesn't come around. Yep. And so now your judgment about how this should be handled is guided by guilt and regret over a conversation that you had, and you want somebody to be awake for 30 seconds, right? So you can apologize and you can square it up in your own head. So, this is where, and again, it's not always reason to reason, right? But having these probate while you're alive documents in place, it keeps this matter, hopefully, for the most part, as a private matter, and it also makes it crystal clear what those wishes are, right?
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk exactly about what those documents that my attorney friend is referring to, and what Luke Perry did, and then how that can apply to you, and how it can apply to all of us. As with today's theme is probate while you're alive. It's so much easier.
Well, it is much easier, especially for guys like. Obviously for Luke and then other teenage heartthrobs like yourself. So let's talk about
That's
this.
Right. All right, we'll be right back on Money in the Law.
And you're back. Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. Jay Marston, Marston Law Group, John Drohan, Main Effort Financial. I commit a little.
For those of you on Radio World listening attentively, I'm pointing to our sound monitor here.
The voice monitor.
Yeah, the voice monitor, and it's on probably the oldest computer I've ever seen, oldest computer screen. However, when Jay brings us in from our breaks, it's full throttle. It's like AC. It's an AC/DC concert.
It has
the decibels.
It had some guardrails on it, and you'll be shocked to hear that from time to time, not only myself but John frequently get somewhat animated, and our vocalization drives us outside of the guardrails.
Vocalization.
Crazy.
That's
crazy.
Right. Vocalization.
That's right.
That is my. That's
like
good. All day long.
Little guardrail vocalization issue there. Guardrail vocalization.
How's your vocalizations? Awesome.
Guardrails.
Right.
In the guardrails. In the guardrails.
Right.
Prior to the break, we're talking about the unfortunate passing of Luke Perry. Obviously, we talked about the planning that he had put in place, and we were talking about the probate while you're alive process, if you will, that was undertaken while they were trying to make some decisions about his health care while he was still with us. And my sense is that we talked about some of the advance directives, right? So he would have had things like a healthcare proxy. He would have said, look, if I can't make a medical decision, this is who makes that decision for me, and probably a backup, right? He would have had probably a living will, right, that says, look, if I'm in some type of persistent vegetative state, this is the decision. Care and comfort measures only. Don't hook me up to every machine under the sun. Just let me sort of go gentle. Also, maybe a HIPAA release form that allows somebody to access medical information and talk about some protective health information to find out what's going on. And then from a financial perspective, they would have had a power of attorney. I don't imagine in this case that they would have used it, given the way the time played out. It was much more of a medical event than it was a financial event. But had he recovered to some degree where there was a need to tap into his assets, I think his net worth was estimated to be about $10 million, if there was a need to come up with some money to pay for his care, to pay for his rehab stay, to pay for improvements or changes to his house or his living situation so that he could be in the most independent setting he could be in, there would have been money and resources available, and there also would have been a clear path to who had the access to get that money and to take care of that money.
Let me just kind of I want to emphasize that point, because and again, you have in your practice, this is what you do. So we see it quite a bit in our practice, but you see it, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but in many cases, that power of attorney becomes so important. I mean, the healthcare proxy as well, but that power of attorney, because oftentimes it doesn't just happen, like these things happen slowly, like people deteriorate more slowly. It's not like this kind of sudden thing, then bam, and then they're gone.
Right.
It's like you have this kind of deterioration, and it gets to the point where, look, once the kind of the group, the decision is made that like dad needs help or mom needs help to kind of make decisions, or she's starting to, cerebrally she's starting to lose it a little bit, or he's starting to like not be able to, is definitely losing his fastball. That power of attorney makes things so much easier and so much cleaner, kind of just to move things along, especially if like they're going from say a rehab center to maybe some sort of long-term care situation. The ability to kind of access those funds and have that power of attorney in place is it saves so many headaches, and it can create such an easier transition for as people start to go into these.
So let's bring it down to sort of the everyday, right? The layperson, if you will, right? So here's Luke Perry worth about $10 million, right? Sizable portfolio. Somebody needs to get in there, and to your point, the paperwork to do that means we don't have to go through the probate court. We don't need oversight from the probate court. We don't need somebody to get appointed as conservator. We don't need to report back to the probate court how the money's being used, right? You have a power of attorney, you've named them, and they have the ability to get in there. Now, that's a $10 million estate, and somebody would say, boy, $10 million, he's got he's got a big problem, right? Yeah. So let's bring it down to the everyday. So you may find yourself in a situation where, if you have a couple of $100,000, right? You got some retirement savings. You have some money in the bank, right? Some money in the bank. Now, if you have a power of attorney named, that person can get in there and they can get a hold of your funds, and they can pay your bills, and they can pay your time at the rehab, and they can pay your property taxes, and they can keep things going along. But even if you needed somebody, for example, if you didn't have any money, but you had 10 grand in the bank, if you were going to apply for benefits, for example, most of the benefits are means tested. We use Medicaid as the example all the time. To apply for Medicaid,
you got to have access.
You have to have under $2,000 in your name. Now, so if you need your Medicaid benefits to start March 1, you need to be under $2,000 March 1. If you have a bank account with $10,000 in it,
guess what?
And nobody can get into your bank account, guess what? You're not eligible for Medicaid.
So that means you have to wait to apply, right?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
And it just extends that process, which, again, is and now granted. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If I have $10,000 and I have to get down to $2,000, I'm allowed to spend $8,000 on myself, right?
Well, that's right. But you're going to be able to get the $8,000.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. If you can't get the $8,000 to pay for some things, preferably the nursing home or some funeral services or things like that, not being able to access those monies puts you in a very difficult position in terms of being able to access benefits. You can't necessarily say, well, I'm not going to get that too. I mean, that's $10,000. It's in the bank, and we're going to forget about it, right? It doesn't work that way, right? The people who sort of who are guarding the benefits and whether or not you're eligible are going to say, look, you're not eligible until you get under $10,000. Right. And if it takes you 2 or 3 months to get somebody appointed as your conservator, that's potentially costing you $10,000 or $11,000 a month at the nursing home while you're waiting for this. And if this drags on a long time, this could become very expensive. And by the way, just so everybody knows, the nursing homes, not really patient about when we get paid, because they know that if people show up and have no money, there's no deep pocket for them.
That's right.
So they will hand you a notice that says, you may have to hit the streets because we can't cover you here. Yeah, you have to show them a plan.
Right. You may not be able to, and it all kind of comes down to this, right? Because it's could be a potentially traumatic experience anyway, right? It's a sad experience. Like, nobody wants to go to a nursing home. Nobody wants to kind of go to these long-term. And if this is kind of where your journey is ending you up, and let's say you really like this one place because of the proximity, because you like the people, because you've heard great things about it, but you can't qualify to get in there, or it's going to delay, and then who knows, they may not have room for you down the road or something like that. Anything that makes I guess my point is, anything that makes the process easier, anything that makes the process cleaner, and makes it faster, and the most, within the letter of the law, the most economical for the patient, then you need to be able to do that. And this all comes back to that power of attorney enables somebody to be able to navigate these things much easier than if they didn't have that.
So that's the probate while you're alive piece. And then the probate when you pass away piece, and they talked a little bit about it, in terms of the planning that he may have done. So in 2015, when he had his cancer scare, the understanding was that because of that, he had gone out and done some planning and set up a will. Now, we had 2 kids, and they're not minors, but they're young, right? They're young.
Well, in 2015, they were minors.
Well, that's right. In 2015, they were. That's right. That would have been 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So his daughter would have been 14, and his son would have been 17, right, or right around there. So they would have been minors at the time. So there would have been probably some guardianship language in there around that. And obviously, then he gets, I don't know how his divorce played out, I don't know when that was, but now he's got a fiance. So now the second part of his plan would have been his estate plan, which is if I'm not around, not if I'm incapacitated, now I pass away. So if he did a will, and if he got what I think would have been good advice, somebody would have said to him, look, you're 52 years old, you're not going anywhere, right? We can't predict anything, but you're not. The probability is that you're not going anywhere. So we're going to do a will for you, but we're also going to do a trust, all right? Because you know what? Because you have $10 million and your kids are 18 and 21.
Right.
And it's usually not a good idea. If anybody's watched any of those shows on Bravo television, it is not a good idea to give 18 and 21-year-olds
What could go wrong?
$5 million.
What could go
right?
wrong?
It's what could possibly happen, right?
Nothing.
Temptation Island, I don't know. Do you give those people $5 million? Do you give the people on Vanderpump Rules $5 million? I don't know. My guess is with no money, they're already making bad decisions. Why make it even worse, right? So I think what probably, as part of his plan, he probably said, look, I'll put a will together. It's probably what we do for our clients all the time, which is a pour over will.
Yep.
I'm not going anywhere, but if I do, all of my assets go into my trust. Now it's private. Now whatever provisions I may have made, whether he made provisions for his ex-wife, whether he made provisions for his fiance, whether he made provisions for his siblings or his parents, that's all private. All the will would say, so if somebody went to the probate court and said, I want to look at Luke Perry's will, well, Luke Perry's will is going to say, all of my money goes to the Perry Family Trust.
End of story.
And that's it.
Yeah,
that's
all
all
you
you
get to
see.
see.
That's where the trail ends, right? After that, nothing. So
You
you'll
get to see who sees it after that? The trustee, right?
the trustee and the beneficiaries,
That's right.
And then in that will, there are probably provisions, you just mentioned it, there's probably provisions that says somebody, not me obviously, because I'm not around, right? Luke Perry's gone. Somebody is going to manage these monies on behalf of my children. And then there's going to be some schedule in there that says my kids get their money, they're part of my estate on a schedule that looks like this. Yep. And because of the size of the estate, maybe they get some of it at 25, maybe they get some of it at 30, maybe they get some of it at 35. There's a long sort of potential payout period there. But again, so take some of the dollars off the back end, right? Forget that it's $10 million. If it's $1 million and you're splitting your $500,000 up between, two kids get $500,000 each, you may have the same concerns,
Even
right?
if it's $200,000, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, so, right, do you, if you really want to use that, let's say it is your intent as you're alive and well and going to work and you say, you know what, if I died tomorrow, I really want my kids to have money for college, right? I really want them, any money, I want to make sure that their college is paid for, right? So if, even if my estate is worth $200,000 and I have 2 kids, then my trust can say, $100,000 per kid to be used for college, right? To be used for college education, and that's it. And the trustee says, they pull out, they say, oh, here's what, they're like, I want my money. And say, well, here's what it can be used for. As long as I'm writing the check to the university that you've applied to and got into, then you're okay. Other than that.
Well, and your trustee could say, well, first of all, before I write you a check for $100,000 to your university, let's see what type of aid you might get, right?
There you go.
Because this $100,000, well designed to pay for school, might go on the back burner because you might be able to actually get some of this picked up for, given your very tragic and horrible circumstances, you might be in a position, believe it or not, to get a fair amount of school paid for either by grants, and I don't have to write $100,000 to the school, I got to write $50 to the school, and you might get $50.
Right.
And
So that's all in the language of the trust. That's all can, I mean, if you
the trustee is going to figure that out.
Well, the estate planning attorney will have figured it out for. Hopefully, your estate planning attorney said, okay, what do you want to do, right? And then your estate planning attorney is going to say, okay, well, what if this happens? And you say, well, if they go to Annapolis and they go to the Air Force Academy, then they don't have to pay for college.
That's
you
right.
say, well, so we can put language in the trust that says if this were to happen, or if they decide I don't want to go to college, I want to be a plumber. Like I love plumbing. Like I that's all I've ever wanted to do.
Right.
Then you say we can, and all that can be clearly annotated inside the trust.
And if you think about a situation like this, and again, just all you're doing is taking some numbers off, right? Forget that it's Luke Perry, right? If it's Bill Perry, who's a plumber, and has a plumbing practice and a couple of pieces of property and some money in the bank, it's the same discussion, right? But in this case here, what's going to happen? Luke Perry, whoever he named as his trustee, maybe it's an individual, maybe it was his fiance, maybe it was a professional, right? Maybe he named an attorney or a law firm. Maybe he named a bank, and that firm is going to be named as and so they're the ones that are going to sit down and they're going to have a discussion with the kids, and they're going to say, okay, so now you've both got $5 million.
These are the rules.
Let's figure out how this works, right? And then they will literally work with the beneficiaries following the rules that Luke Perry laid out in that trust to say, this is how you get your money, right? Maybe it's just income. Now, it's income off of a $5 million portfolio. You're probably going to do okay, right? $300,000 a year in income for the rest of your life, that might be enough, right? Yep. And so there's going to be a whole discussion around how this happens. And by the way, this is the same discussion that would happen if it was you or if it was me, right? Someone's going to have to sit down and say, what do I do? How does this play out? What's the plan? But that's more than likely what happens. So and by the way, if this was Aretha Franklin or if this was Prince, the conversation would be the same. Prince, do you have your advance directives lined up? Because if something happens to you, somebody needs to make a decision for you. Oh, you do? Great. And by the way, do we need to set up the Paisley Park Trust to carry and catch all your assets? Great. Who do you want to get your money, your property, your royalties? All that's going to go where? ABC? Great. We'll set all that up. So again,
where were you?
Right?
Where were you?
I was at 847 Washington Street.
Wow.
It's the global headquarters for Mars and Law, for those of you who wonder about that. So I'm sitting there
It's too
waiting.
bad Prince didn't drive down Washington Street.
Waiting for celebrity phone calls. You would have noticed the car. It would have looked like Prince's car,
That's right. Yeah, that car is not from around here.
Yeah, he doesn't show up in a Corolla, right? He shows up. It's a bit of a ride,
Nothing
right?
wrong with the Corolla, but
No,
his Corolla might have been purple, right? Might have had some, some flare on the back of it. Yeah, maybe those lights underneath, right? The lights that kind of shine on the tarmac, like the kind that Christian's got. Christian's got that stuff. He's got on his car.
So the idea is to think about it from this perspective, right? It's not about let's wait till I'm old, right? Because late might be too late, right? So this is about having an understanding shave off some zeros. It's not about the zeros, right? It's about control. It's about who has the ability to make these decisions. Have you left instructions? If I can't do it, who does what, right? I mean, it's funny. You walk out the door, you leave a note for your kids, right? Do this, right? Throw some laundry in, clean the kitchen, fill the dishwasher, throw some laundry in again, and here's money for a pizza.
And
right?
if Dad gets hit by a piece of Skylab.
That's because you're leaving to go for an overnight, or you're going to your friend's house and you won't be home later tonight. But you're gone.
Going to St. Patrick's Day party.
You're going to St. Patrick's Day party. But you know what? People don't do it. And guess what? The reason you're doing these documents, unfortunately, is because you're gone for good.
Yeah.
You're gone for good, right? So you don't get to make a phone call to say, hey, I can't read your handwriting. Did you say 2 loads of laundry or 2 fill the dishwasher? Nope. There's none of that opportunity. So you have to get this stuff taken care of. And we've talked about it. We've had examples where we've seen people who have done it really well, and we have examples of people who have not done it very well. In addition, by the way, to the Luke Perry piece, I know our home viewing audience can't see this, but I'm also holding in my hand a will that was done by somebody that you might be somewhat familiar with. The individual's name, I believe, was Elvis A. Presley.
Elvis Aaron Presley.
From Shelby County, Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This was done, it was filed August 22nd, 1977. And guess what? Elvis's will looks a whole heck of a lot like my will and probably like your will, right?
Elvis Presley.
He says in the beginning, if I have another will, it's no good. And he says, this is what's going to happen to my property. This is how it's going to pay all my bills and pay all my taxes. And then guess what he has in there? Guess what all the stuff gets left to? A trust. A trust, right? Everything I have goes into a trust.
What's the name of the trust? Is it the Graceland Trust? Is it the Heartbreak Hotel Trust? I mean, it's good. I mean,
is it the Hunka Burning Love Trust? We're not even gonna broach that subject. It demeans.
You could go all day.
We could go all day. But that's exactly right. If I have any real estate, let my executive decide what they're going to do.
If I have any real estate.
Right.
Have you ever been to Graceland?
I've never been. No,
have.
I might own a piece of property.
Yeah.
It might. By the way, it might be pretty cool, and it might hang around for a little while,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
might make a couple of bucks off it. Right.
Yeah, it might be worth something. It might be worth somebody to hang on to and use as, I don't know, maybe like just to hold on to some of my stuff.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
For any of you who have never been to Graceland, we went many years ago. If you're a true Elvis Presley fan, you must go to Graceland.
Yep.
You must go, and it will not be what you expected. It will not be. And you think Graceland's like this huge palatial, like, acres upon acres of Pemberley-like estate. It's a big house. It's a big house in the middle of Memphis, Tennessee, and there's like a Popeyes and a Roy Rogers, and there's on either side of it. But the cool thing about Graceland, and they're smart how they do this. We were talking about this just yesterday. So Graceland sits up on a hill on one side of the street. Across the street is like the Welcome Center, right? The
Sure.
Graceland Welcome Center. So that's where all the action is. That's where all the people go. It's where you park. It's where Elvis's plane is parked,
Yep.
right? You walk into the Welcome Center, 1 out of 10 people, and let's say there's 5,000 people in there on a busy day. 1 out of 10 of them is dressed like Elvis.
Of course.
And that's the best part of the
Yeah,
show.
of course.
It's the best. And people just come in like, I'm coming in to see Elvis. I'm coming to see you. I'm dressing like Elvis.
While
I'm
you're
gonna be
using
Elvis.
your Elvis impersonation, guess who the beneficiary of his trust is?
Would that be somebody named Priscilla?
Nope. It would be somebody named Lisa Marie.
Lisa
right?
Marie
His daughter,
Presley.
and by the way, any other issue he may have. I'm not saying that there are. I'm not trying to stir up any controversy. I'm not trying to get all grassy knoll here in anybody. But that's the idea. So the point is, and it references his parents, right? References his grandmother, right? References, what was his grandmother's name? That's right, it was Minnie May.
Minnie May.
References his grandmother and his father, Vernon, right? So references them. So again, we're trying to highlight the fact that although some of the more celebrity estate planning approaches are out there, the important thing to take away is those celebrity approaches are the same approaches that, now again, the dollars are different. There are other quirks about the whole thing. There's things that need to be addressed.
Yep.
But there is an undercurrent of consistency as to the way these things have been handled. Right now, what's different about this here is, this trust that Elvis had, Elvis put this trust in his will. It's called a testamentary trust. That's
learn
why
something new every day.
That's why we know so much about it, because it's part of your
subject to
will,
probate.
and your will is a public
you go.
document, and that's how you get it there. If Elvis had come to the Marsden law firm, Elvis would have had a pour-over will that says everything goes to my, and then we would have had all kinds of fun naming this thing. Naming this thing.
Which you would have been 10
I would
years
say,
old.
I would have said Elvis. I said I come up with a list of names. Don't take it the wrong way. Okay,
Elvis is your Highness, Your Majesty.
We could put it in. We could put it in the Jailhouse Rock Trust. We could put it in the Hunka Burn
I don't know
Trust.
if I want to do. I don't want to do Jailhouse Rock, Jay.
Okay. All right, Elvis. How about I get a couple of other names for you, Elvis? Elvis, we can do the Heartbreak Hotel
First of all,
Trust.
you don't address him as Elvis. You address him as Mr. Presley.
And then here's what I would. Of course it would be. Well, I address him as Sir. But here, Elvis. We talked about doing the clam bake trust. I don't like it.
We're not naming it. We're staying out of Hollywood.
Didn't go that well.
No.
That wasn't a good year for you. Let's stay away from that.
We're definitely not the Viva Las Vegas Trust.
How about the Aloha from Hawaii Trust? Why don't we do that? Right?
Make it stop.
Since my baby left me. So that's the story. Again, right? Whether you're a celebrity in the world, or you're a celebrity in your own family, or you're a celebrity in your own mind. That's right. Exactly right. This type of planning has to get done no matter who you are.
Plan your estate.
You don't want this stuff playing out in the public space, and working with a very competent, local, handsome attorney can help you work this stuff through.
Where
so that
will
you
you
get this
find
taken
one?
care of.
Go to moneyinthelaw.net, and that may guide you.
We will find you a referral.
Go to go to moneyinthelaw.net.
referral.
See some of the new the videos are on there. The cable access TV videos are on there. So you want to see your two favorite Saturday morning hosts live on video. Come to moneyinthelaw.net. You'll see them there. We're done.
That was good. That was good stuff.
That was a good show. All right, and again, unfortunately, our show was based on the demise of the late Luke Perry and now the king of rock and roll, Elvis.
Nothing but love for either one of them. We wish all the
Burn it
best.
love.
Condolences, obviously,
Burn it love.
to Luke's family, and again, unfortunately, it took a tragedy like that to give us the opportunity to put a lesson together.
So everybody
like this.
learn their lesson. Learn the lesson. Go out and make your estate plan. Make your estate plan.
Do it for Elvis.
We'll see everybody next week on Money in the Law, 9 o'clock Saturday morning, and also on Cable Access TV. We'll see everybody next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.